camera. I am going to be recording today's meeting. So as we get started, if you're on camera, just remember your face will be on the recording. So if you don't want to be on the recording, go ahead and take your camera off. As we go through today's presentation, keep yourself on mute. That way then we avoid any background information. If you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand. You can do so hovering over the little smiling face and hand raise button at the top of the page and raise your hand, or you can also put your question in the chat box. We're welcome to answer those. We'll either read those questions aloud or answer them as we go. Today is meant to be a informal conversation. So if you have questions or questions on something that is not on today's presentation, please feel free to ask them. We're very lucky to have both our chair and executive director, as well as both general counsels here today to talk to you guys. With that, I will go ahead and turn this over to Chelsea Buchholtz, who's going to get things started today.
Well, fantastic. Thanks for being with us today. This really is intended to be informal. There's 17 of us on the call. I'm guessing that others may join, and of course, we'll share it with others over social media and on our website and all those things. We are going to take the opportunity to just give an overview of what happened at the commission meeting. Much of those updates are related to changes to rules, both adopted, meaning those going into effect, and those that are being considered, proposed. So we have both Vanessa Burgess and Abby Lee, our legal team, here to give you a little update on that. We'll also talk to you. We have gotten in a rhythm for each commission meeting to also have a workshop. It's a less formal opportunity for our commissioners to roll up their sleeves and to dive a little deeper into a handful of topics that they are interested in. This time they talked about a few different things. I've spent a significant amount of time talking about what the focus will be in 2022 and what initiatives they want to take on. So we'll give you an update on some of that. We also have a new database coming up that I want to talk to you about. We'll give you a little COVID update, though I'm hoping we have very few COVID updates left, and we'll have plenty of time for question and answer. Because we are a small group, feel free to just speak up or raise your hand or put a question in the chat kind of as we go. We don't necessarily have to wait till the end. Scott, do you want to say anything on the front end?
Chelsea said this is a very informal discussion. We're going to go over some rules that were proposed, some that were adopted, go over some changes as far as broker's license and stuff like that. So very informal. We invite the questions, chat them, or feel free to jump in. And we try to do this as soon after the commission meeting as possible. That way it gives everybody ample time to make comments on rules or contact us on workshop agenda items or whatever. So anyway, this is really to get information to you and to answer your questions and help ease some concerns that you might have. So I will turn it over to Chelsea, and I guess we'll go over some of the proposed rules that were proposed.
We'll start there. Abby, Vanessa?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay.
Great.
I'm in a room with somebody else who's on the meeting. So, okay, we are going to actually walk through the adopted rules first. And I will cover this first one, which is 535.92. So this is one, it will go into effect December 2nd of 21. And it's a pretty specific one, but I'm going to walk through the changes on it just so that everyone's clear on what it means. So this rule, it went up for proposal. It's since been adopted. It removed subsection F, which was a specific provision that allowed a license holder who had taken a course related to a professional designation that had not been previously approved for CE credit to go back and try and get that approval taken care of it went ahead and removed that provision, which we ran the numbers on that, and it was a very small percentage anyways to which that was utilized. And ESAC had found that it was a little bit of a confusing provision. It wasn't highly utilized. It also contained a list of professional designations, which those can, those kind of ebb and flow, and it seemed like it was one that was really easy for it to go out of date. It also gave the appearance that the commission had given some sort of approval to those professional designations, which it hadn't. So in the interest of transparency, they thought that would be a really good thing to strike. So that one is important. I think it was not a highly utilized subsection, but I just wanted to make sure everyone here knows exactly what it means, and it wasn't this major change, but it was a change. And then Abby is going to cover the rest of our adopted rules, so I'll turn it over to her.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to cover the rest of the adopted rules, as Vanessa mentioned. And for the remainder of these, they're really more tied to legislative changes. They're less substantive. So not even listed here. We did have two sort of categories of rules that had previously been adopted under the emergency rulemaking procedure because of the legislative change and the effective date of that legislative change. So those were the form changes, and then the changes to the disclosure, receiving an undisclosed commissioner rebate, and the disclosure form that corresponds to that rule. So nothing practically different for you all, because those already went into effect under the emergency rulemaking process. We just had to also propose and then adopt under the normal rulemaking process. Just a procedural issue there. But on the screen, you've got three other rules here that we formally adopted at the meeting. You've got a change to the ESAC rule, the Education Standards Advisory Committee. This was simply to make changes to correspond to some legislative changes and to correct some outdated terminology. So things like changing Chelsea Buchholtz title from administrator to executive director, things like that. The two inspector rules, 201 and 206, again, pretty minor in nature and non-substantive. They corrected a reference to the standards of practice in 201, and then changed in 206 the date that the committee is abolished to correspond to another legislative change. So again, all those changes also go into effect December 2nd.
Okay.
Okay.
Abby, thanks so much for that. Vanessa, are you going back over to proposed rules now?
Yeah, I'm going to cover the proposed rules. So the first one is relevant to everyone, but hopefully will require very little of you. So we had to do a change. This is a proposed rule, so you won't see it until after it's been adopted. That's important to know, but it is a change to the consumer protection notice. That change is just removing a reference to home warranty companies as being regulated by TREC, because those have now been moved over to TDLR. So if you have anyone who's asking you, where can I file a complaint on a residential service company, a home warranty company? Those are all over at TDL, the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation now. So we are proposing a change to the consumer protection notice, and it will just remove that reference. So you won't see that go live until after the February meeting when it's officially adopted, pending adoption, of course. And just to reassure everyone, because I know this is something that comes up whenever there's a change to that consumer protection notice, there should be no issue with the link changing. So this is really just a scratch through. It won't be there anymore, but in terms of linking to the TREC's link on that, there should be no change in what you need to do. So again, you'll see that I'm guessing late February is when you'll see it, pending adoption and all of that stuff. But I just want to make sure you know that link will not change. And also you'll know that RSCs, or residential service companies, home warranty companies, you can now refer folks over to TDLR. Okay, and now I will cover what I consider to be the big one. So this is 535.56. This is the rule that relates to education and experience requirements for a broker license. This rule change is recommended by the Broker Responsibility Working Group. They've been working on it for a long time. I'm going to cover the highlights. I highly recommend, and I'll say this again at the end, I highly recommend you take a look at these changes, get to know them, and if you have comment on them, now is the time to provide that well, not now in this meeting. Now, generally in this date range is the time to propose public comment, and I'll walk through how you can do that in just a second. Okay, so what happened here is the Broker Responsibility Working Group has proposed a new point system for broker's license that is intended to be easier to understand. Basically, it's just a different numbering system that I think is easier. I'll say it this way, it's easier to do the math in your head. And so there's not a change so much in the way in which it's weighted. It's truly just a number system change. Take a look at that. It doesn't increase the requirements to obtain a broker's license, and the intent behind these changes was truly to streamline the broker application process. So what you'll see is you'll see that change in the point system numbering. You'll see a change to the transaction requirement to perform, so it has to be at least one transaction per year for at least 4 of the 5 preceding years. It removes low point categories. So these were categories where you could get points that under the old system, I think were 10 points. Under this system were 1 point, and went ahead and are proposing to eliminate those, since it's really not looking like anyone was ever make it or break it with these categories. So it's removing those categories on exclusive right to sell, buyer and tenant representation agreements, and listings. The proposed rule also increases, this is a good one, well, it's an important one. It increases opportunity for agents to count team management and delegated supervision by eliminating the prior cap on points. So this is really allowing for those who are overseeing transactions to get closer to getting that broker's license, with the thought that they are, maybe they're not out there in the field, but they are overseeing so much. They are intimately familiar with these transactions. They're seeing what's going through. They have, their finger is still on the pulse. Before there was a cap on that, and now there's no longer, as it's proposed, there would no longer be the cap on that. And so if we've seen, I said it was a good one, it's a big one, and we've seen a lot of positive reactions to that. However, this is the time for public comment. So these, just to quickly go over the rule process, which is never super exciting, but I think on this one, it's important to understand so you know where we are. These rules have been proposed. So they are out, they are published in the Texas Register, and now is the time when the agency welcomes public comment. So if anything that I just said makes you go, wait a second, I hate that idea, it doesn't make any sense because of X, Y, and Z, or wow, she just said something that will alter the course of my business forever in a really positive way, now is the time where you can submit public comment to that effect. Or if you see something where you're like, hey, why didn't you consider doing the point system this way, or X, Y, and Z, right? This is the time when you can put forward those public comments. And what we'll do is we'll gather them. They'll be submitted to the Broker Responsibility Working Group, who will review all of those comments and potentially make changes in response to those comments. And I'm going to talk about this slide one second. I'm going to note that there's a form associated. There's 2 forms. There's Supplement A and Supplement B is what we call them, where you fill out your experience in order to submit. Those have corresponding changes as well. If you want to see a copy of those, I think they're up on the website. And you can also request it from the register. But if you have trouble with that, you can email us to see the form changes. So all of that said, we do have this public comment tool on the website that we really hope makes things easier for the process of submitting public comment, and we welcome this public comment. You will see changes that are made in response to public comment. So this is truly your way to weigh in and let us know what you think about this change. Like I said, this rule is really relevant. It's one that a lot of people utilize. So we just want everyone to know that it's out there for proposal. It does have changes, and the agency welcomes your public comment at this time. The public comment period ends December 26th. So you'll want to get those comments in by December 26th. And hopefully using this tool will make it really easy. You can just type it in, push send, and we'll get it.
Hey, Vanessa, just to be clear, the public comment period is not yet open, correct? It's the 26th of November is when people can officially start to submit comments, correct?
Yeah. So technically, yes, Christine, and we actually didn't cover this with you. We'll accept the comments beforehand.
Great. That's awesome.
It's no, and so we'll accept them now. It's really it's that cutoff date that's probably the most important.
Right.
So you can
The
start
tool
submitting.
though itself is not available on the Trek website was kind of my point. I think that they can submit via general counsel.
Yeah, no,
Is
it is
it?
actually you
Oh.
can do it now.
My bad. I'm so sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So yeah, it's live and ready to go. If anyone wants to do it right now, you can do it right now.
That's awesome.
Or after this coffee with the commission. And that is what we have. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Vanessa, and thank you, Abby, for giving us the download on those. We try to make sure you are aware of all rule changes. Some of them are boring and non-substantive in nature. They're just tweaks to the law. But that last one that Vanessa mentioned, that 535.56, that's really the one that I think will affect license holders the most, and is what she called the big one. So we're hoping to get a lot of comments on that, so we have more input to share with the commission. We did note it. We did mention the website at the beginning of this coffee with the commission. The website was down. It is back up. So you can now go to the website to reference some of these things. Were you, Christine, were you saying something?
A couple of things. I've shared links to the comment tool in the up. It looks like somebody's taking control of the presentation. Hold on. Anyway, in the comment period, for the comment tool, I linked to it in the chat box. So you guys are welcome to go ahead and go in and look. You can look at the rules. And then secondly, I just wanted to make sure we took a second to let people ask questions if they had questions about specifically. I know that rule is kind of, people might have questions. So I wanted to give people an opportunity before we moved on, if they wanted to raise their hand or put questions in the chat box for Vanessa and Abby, since they're here, or Kelsey or Scott. And then the other question I had was, do you guys know when the next broker responsibility working group meeting is? Do we know? Anyone?
It will be likely in January.
I believe it's in January. It is not the 7th, because I think that's somebody else. We will look it up and we will let you know.
It's just the 12th of January.
January
Awesome.
12th. There you go.
Thank you so much.
That will be an in-person meeting.
Great. And I just wanted to make sure people knew, because that's when possibly they may have further discussion, correct, on some of that. So it might be a good opportunity for people to make sure that they know when that next step in the process is going to be.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Christine, which is that if you the written public comment is a great way to comment. You can also attend these meetings. They are open meetings, and there's an opportunity for public comment at the meetings themselves. Like I said, this meeting will be in person, so it'll be downstairs in Austin in our main building. We also provide recordings and sort of, they're really neat actually. If you've never looked at how we do our minutes, I take zero credit for this because it happened well before my time, but I love it because every agenda item is broken down and you can see what happened. And if you click on the link in that specific agenda item, it takes you to that exact moment in the video so that you are not just like constantly fast forwarding and rewinding, etc. So if you have questions on, hey, I know the broker responsibility working group was going to look at the issue of that new point system. Let me go see, and you can click on that part and it'll take you to that exact spot where they were addressing maybe not your specific comment, but the comments generally. And that's true of any of our meetings. So if you want to go back to commission meetings and say, hey, what was it that they said about, who's going to be on ESAC this go around? You can actually click on that specific moment and it will take you there. And I think it is wonderful.
Okay, I just actually shared a link to our commission meetings and committee meetings page. And on that page, guys, who for on the call that maybe aren't aware, you can see all of our upcoming meetings, their schedule, and then any of the past meetings. They'll have the materials, minutes, And like Vanessa just said, the annotated meeting minutes with video for the commission meetings, where you can click through and see who said what and when during the conversations on specific topics. It's extremely helpful. So with that, I don't see anyone jumping to ask questions, so we can move on. I just wanted to give some time to let people ask questions if they had them. So Chelsea, I'll kick it back to you. Sorry for that.
Okay, so the day after the commission meeting, we had a commission workshop. I'm gonna let our chair, Scott Kesner, talk through some of the topics that were considered. Before I do so, I wanted to also mention that we have one more of our commissioners who's on the Coffee with the Commission call this morning. Commissioner Leslie Lerner has joined us. So Commissioner Lerner, if you have any additional insights to say, please feel free to speak up. So, okay, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, just going back to the proposed rule for the broker hours. This has been in the works for a long time, and the last broker responsibility working group was chaired by Commissioner Lerner prior to her being on the commission. And the timing on this works really well. The proposed rule's out. You have a comment period. Broker responsibility working group meets again in January before the commission meets in February. So it's, it doesn't always happen. We have comments, the responsibility working group meets, and then the commission. It's a great timeline to get comments in and make any changes or whatever we need to do. But we're getting a lot of input from across the state, wanting this change to help get some points for those that are truly supervising and right in the middle of the transaction, but not actually doing the transaction. Workshop, Executive Director Buchholtz mentioned this. We do a workshop every quarter after the commission meeting, and we always have things that we think we need to work on as commissioners, and whether it's Robert's rules, whether it's policy procedures, open meetings, whatever. But this is that we're hearing from some of the shareholders, some of the licensees, and we'll just kind of go through these for questions. We've had a lot of requests to look at wholesaling, and you can do it with or without a license. Currently, the only statute that is on the books is if you are selling an equitable interest, that needs to be disclosed once you're selling it. There's really no disclosure when you're purchasing it or starting the transaction. And even though we're hearing a lot of concerns about it, and our number one position at Trek is to protect. There's really not a lot of evidence that we can put our hands on to take legislatively. So, we're reaching out to shareholders, give us your input. I've received 2 emails, 1 video and 1 email, specific transactions that involved wholesaling. So it's something that seems to be a concern, but there's not really any anecdotal evidence that we can grab hold of, and anything that would be done like that would require legislative change. Chelsea, you want to clean up what I messed up on that and kind of give them from the attorney view?
No, you did great. You cut out in a really key when you were saying something pretty important about the mission of the commission is to protect the public. And so when examining this issue, we're doing so from that vantage point. So I think we're in a position of just collecting information and kind of exploring the options of how best to move forward with protecting the consumer in mind. There's on the wholesaling issue, there is, I think there's a little bit of a spectrum of what could happen. It's very important at the commission level that we not limit competition, that the motivation of actions be, as we said, protect the consumer. And so we need to make sure that the consumer is being hurt by the wholesaling practice. So that's really what we're going to spend some time looking at.
The second thing we talked about was review criminal history, how to make it more quicker, determine whether or not, you qualify for a license, look at different things to streamline it, but yet make it kind of standard, for the offenses that we look at. We need to simplify the enforcement process. We hear a lot of communications input that, we need more responsible brokers, we need more responsible agents, we need better enforcement. But unfortunately, the only thing TREC can do is, once there's a complaint, we investigate it. Nearly everything goes back to broker responsibility, and we have a broker responsibility class, and everybody takes it. Unfortunately, it doesn't always lead to broker responsibility the way most of us would like to see it. So we're looking at mechanisms to simplify the enforcement process. We've talked about, a number of things. We've talked about anonymous complaints. We talked about ombudsman service. We've talked about, informal complaints. We have opened the spectrum up. Someone told me at the last meeting after the last meeting, they were doing a luncheon. There was 200 people there, and they said, "How many of you have actually filed a complaint?" And only one person raised their hand. And we want more responsibility. We want people to protect the consumer, but yet at the same time, we don't want to file a complaint because we might end up having to work with them. No matter what market you're at or in, it's still relatively a small market. And so anyway, we're looking at simplifying that. Examining license portability, that's kind of a nationwide thing. We're not saying if you're licensed in Georgia, you get a license here, but how do you make it portable? If you've had, a bunch of principles 1, principles 2, contract law or whatever in one state, is it portable into Texas? I'll have Chelsea follow up on this. We're members of Arello, and they're starting a database of classes that might make this a little easier. Also have to be concerned with military spouses as far as moving to Texas and doing licenses. So Chelsea, I'll let you talk about the Arello database for classes that they're kind of putting together.
Sure. So Arello is working on making a universal reporting mechanism for education history, so that no matter where you go, you can use kind of the same document to show what education you've had for license history. And I think that will be helpful for people coming into Texas and people in Texas who are wanting to get licensed elsewhere. The challenge with Texas is that we have some of the strictest education requirements for licensure when compared to other states. And so when we talk about license portability, I don't think there's the tolerance. I am not the policymaker. I implement, but there doesn't seem to be the tolerance among the commission and really among the community and the industry to reduce the requirements to get a license significantly, which would that's the only way for there to be true portability. If you're coming from another state to come into Texas and not need those extra hours. But we do want to streamline the process and make it a little easier to understand, even for us. When we examine, the legislature for the last couple sessions has required us to allow the spouses of those in the military who have a license in another state to practice in Texas. And so we've looked at, we have adopted rules related to that. But when you look at license portability and then you layer on the military spouse issue, and you look at substantial equivalency, which is what we require from other states, there's just a lot to wrap your brain around. So we'd like to simplify that process for those wanting a license in Texas. Just to note, over the last 10 years, and I've said this a few times, this is my back of the napkin calculation, but With the census coming out recently, we learned that the population in Texas over the last decade has increased by about 16% across Texas. But our license holder count has increased about 30%. So we're not overly concerned about barriers to entry, that it's too hard to get a license, because we're growing faster than the state of Texas is growing. But we do want to make sure that we're not overly burdensome, even in kind of the just navigating the process. So that's why we're examining that issue. I don't think we'll get to the point where our requirements are the same as in Maine or Illinois or California or elsewhere.
Okay, and the last thing on our slide that we kind of talked about at the workshop was increase the educational minimum standards. You know, this happened probably 10 years ago. No matter what the transaction involves, there are minimum requirements that license holders must give. They're not only clients, but they're customers. And so we need more education on the minimum, services. Has nothing to do with price, has nothing to do with compensation, has everything to do with minimum services the license holder owes to the public, whether it's a customer or whether it's a client with fiduciary. And so again, goes back to broker responsibility, more education on what the license holders must do, the broker must do, and so forth. And those are kind of, what we talked about in the workshop. And if you have something that you're concerned about, throw it at us. Those workshops are really, really beneficial. We have the opportunity to discuss a lot of different which direction we need to go to truly do our duty to protect the consumer. Okay, I'll hand it back over to Chelsea.
Fantastic. So this is how we're going to spend our time over the course of the next calendar year. I will mention that we just finished the legislative session, but we're also preparing for the next legislative session. When we end 2022, we will be facing another legislative session following January. So part of our planning for this coming year is also the planning for the session. A few other things I want to mention before we just move to questions. The first is our just some of our license holder statistics. For the first time this last fiscal year 2021, which ended at the end of August, we maintained more than a 200,000 total license holder count. It was by the end 218,735. The way that broke down is that we had just over 47,000 brokers and just over 165,000 sales agents. The remainder of our license holders are for the smaller license holder categories. So that we have had a significant increase. And so we have ramped up our staff just a little bit in order to support that increase, and are committed to maintaining a low hold time for our customer relations and to respond to emails quickly. So we hope that you've seen that. So far this month, our hold time has been just over a minute. So we're really proud of that. Now I'll tell you that it depends on when you call. First day of the month, last day of the month, bad times to call because our numbers jump up really high. People also often call around the noon hour, give or take an hour or two. We are open from 7 in the morning until 6 p.m. Our phones are, so give us a call. Just to give you a little bit of context, 20 years ago, our fiscal year 2021 concluded with 114,000 total license holders. So as we've mentioned, we have increased substantially. In fact, we've increased every year since 2012. Sometimes it goes a little bit like this, but we have been only going up since 2012. I'm confused by all these numbers because every year I've talked about have the same 4 numbers, 2, 0, 1, 2 in various orders, right? And then I already mentioned to you this increase of 30%. So that's some of our statistics for you. If ever you're interested in more statistics, just reach out and I'm happy to share. I am more of a words person than a numbers person, but numbers matter for sure. One internal update I wanted to give you, because it does affect you, is that we are replacing our licensing database. Right now we use a database that we call Versa. And Versa talks to our website and holds all of the information that we tap into on a daily basis. It's how we receive payments. It's how we manage criminal history. It's how we manage your education. It is the machine behind our work. It's about 11 years old. It's definitely end of life. And some of our, what I will say in a very official term, some of our clunkiness is related to the age of that database. So we are working towards a replacement. That's a several $million project. And it takes a considerable amount of time and effort for our staff. So we have published our request for offer, which is basically the request for people to give us bids. Even that process has been a several month process to make sure that we're describing what we need in the most concrete of ways so that the bids we receive are accurate. Ultimately, we plan on having this new database in place by the middle of 2023. We expect to have the vendor chosen by early next year, and then it'll take about a year to build. So this will affect you primarily because we will become more and more clunky over the next year or so. But then once that new database is up and running, we will have more streamlined applications. We'll have much more self-service. You'll be able to do much more online and manage your own account per se, which I think will mean that you don't need to sit on hold and wait to talk to one of us. You can just do things for yourself. We will always be available by phone and email to help, but our mission is to give you the tools you need to not need us nearly as much. So hold tight. It'll be about a year and a half. That will fly by. I don't know at what age I hit when time just seemed to just go in fast forward motion, but I know a year and a half will go quickly. And lastly, I wanted to give you an update on just what is happening within our office with COVID-19. We have remained primarily remote since March of last year. We have made several plans to return to the office, all of which have been postponed. Our most recent plan to return to the office is for the beginning of the year. I'm again holding those plans very loosely, just as you know, news reports show that numbers are spiking again, but we're hopeful. So we will return to the office, Lord willing, in January of next year. And if all goes well, we will also be able to open our physical office to license holders again. I look forward to that. That should not change, other than our doors being open. It shouldn't change what you see from us. Our working remotely really has had very little impact on how we work in an outward-facing manner. We're still opening the mail. We're still processing checks that are sent to us, and we're trudging along. So with that, I think we are open to hearing from you. How can we help you? What questions can we answer?
Chelsea, I had a couple calls prior to the coffee with the commissioner, and one of them involved the earnest money and option money going to the title company. And when that contract change was made, it was truly a joint effort between TREC, Texas Realtors, Texas Land and Title Association, broker lawyer. They reached out to all the shareholders involved in the transaction and said, how can we make this better? And they looked at several different things. And what this concern was the money is sent to the title company, earnest money and option, and the contract addresses this. Any money received first goes to the option, then the earnest money. And there are escrow agents, title companies that are not wanting to release the option to the seller until either closing or the contract terminates. And in the contract in paragraph 5, A4, it talks about the escrow agent can release option to the seller without any further notification or permission or whatever from the purchaser. And then paragraph 18A talks about they can release it once they've determined good funds. And a couple local escrow agents, title companies we use in El Paso, days, and one of them is 2 weeks, which is basically 10 business days, okay? And so once that hits, they are allowed to release that to the seller. And someone made the comment, well, you know, the seller should have it immediately. You know, one of the reasons this change was made is because the sellers weren't getting the option money. The broker would clean off their desk after the transaction closed, and there's a $100 check made to the seller, or they would leave it to the escrow agent, and the escrow agent would put it in the drawer. So, you know, this kind of streamlined it to where it all goes to the escrow agent, but they are allowed to release it prior to closing or prior to the termination of the contract, according to paragraph 5, and then following up on paragraph 18 as far as good funds. Else, communications with your escrow agents, find out what their procedures are. I remember in the past, sometimes you would have to get them on contract to them as far as what they can and can't do, because they want to protect their liability, yet at the same time, almost who I talk to, it is truly, but they do have to have good funds. So that, and then last Friday, there was quite a bit of discussion about the public improvement, PID disclosure and how to fill it out. And Chelsea, there was a video by somebody on Broker or Lawyer that kind of explained it. And I can't remember who it was or whatever. I just remember it was posted. And it might have been posted by TLTA. But anyway, that's not a big issue with in El Paso, because we have very few public improvement districts, but I know other markets certainly do. And, we need input on that as far as how to fill it out. And again, that was a statute, that was legislative. That was a change the legislature made that looked at TREC and said, okay, this is the new rule, implement it, you've got 90 days. And so I know it's a problem, but it's something we will continue to work through, and we will try to communicate, as much as we can to help make it a little bit easier.
That's right. And I think you nailed it all. My guess is that the video is by Brian Watts, posted on TLTA's website. And you're right, that was just a statutory requirement. There is a form that is out there that's a voluntary form. We expect there to be other forms that are created that you're welcome to use. Vanessa, Abby, is there anything y'all want to say to that, or to the option contract, or the payment of the option contract? God, I think you covered it.
No, I think that covers it. If you do have comments as it relates to, in particular, those contract changes, you can send those to Broker Lawyer for consideration at its next meeting, and they're handling consideration of those comments at a little bit differently now, so that you can really see the categories of questions that we're receiving lumped together. So I think it's really insightful to see what issues or questions people have as it relates to those changes.
Just on that point, the next Broker Lawyer Committee meeting is January 14th at 9 a.m. And the Broker Responsibility Working Group, just to answer the question from before, is January 12th at 10 a.m.
And that those will both be in person. I saw a comment in there about the sound and the video. I think as we return to the live meetings, there's no way that doesn't get better.
Yeah.
And also on the commission meeting, sometimes the commissioners, myself included, we do not hit the microphone. And so when you don't hit your microphone, it certainly interferes with the audio quality. So we will try to be better at hitting the mic so everybody can hear us, because sometimes we forget. But I think the in-person meeting will certainly help the audio quality.
Just to do a quick plug for our social media star on the call, we have the commission, as part of their initiatives and feedback we received from the commissioners, was to try to kind of expand on some of our video feed and video updates that we provide to license holders. Vanessa Burgess has taken time to share video updates on a couple of different topics. The most recent I just put in the chat box. She went over the contract form updates. So it's another great resource. We'll be sharing those on our YouTube channel as we go. Another one's going to be coming out this week. So just keep those in mind. They're a great quick reference for you to share with your agents if you're a broker, or with your office. And that in mind, we also will share this video from today's Coffee with the Commission on our YouTube channel and on social media, so you can share those with those that weren't able to attend. I know with today's meeting getting started right as the website crashed, it was not necessarily the most convenient time to get a meeting started. So if those people that maybe couldn't attend, you can share this video with them there. Anyone have any other questions I'm going to hand it back over to Chelsea or Scott for their final remarks, but just in case, I wanted to open this up and make sure that people had a time to post questions or comments in the chat box, or raise your hand if you had any questions. And with that, Chelsea and Scott, we have about 10 minutes left on the call. Just wanted to kick this over to you and see if you guys had any last minute comments or things you wanted to point out.
Only that I'm very grateful for each of you joining us today. I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving with your families. The agency will be closed Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week, so that we can be with our families. And wish you all the very best. Scott?
Yeah, I mean, we appreciate everybody that joined. Again, our goal is to be more transparent, to be more open, to get feedback. Our duty is to protect the consumer, which we've said over and over again. I will tell you, we have every commissioner that is part of the commission is open, engaged. If you have an issue, contact them, contact myself, general counsel, executive general counsel, and let us know what we can do to help you, in the real estate industry, and yet protect the consumer. Staff is always working hard to give information. I think the more information, better for not only the licensees, but also the consumers. And, we're open. So feel free to reach out to us. We hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving, and let's hope the market continues to be really, really, hot in 2022.
All right, guys, with that, I don't see any pending questions. So I think we can wrap this up for today. Chelsea, Scott, thank you so much for being here with us today. And guys, have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks. All righty.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye, guys.
Christine.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's just a